Start.
Hello, I am Oliver Schneeman from Germany, and I want now to read my speech, what I have given yesterday on the anti-fascist conference on Crimea. In the first part, I said, ladies and gentlemen, I must thank for the invitation from the organizers for me to come. Thank you very much. I would like to give my speech about using Otto von Bismarck, our first Reich Chancellor ever in Germany, as platform for peace. To get to this point, I first have to draw a small bow that led me here. We, the party German Center, in German it's Deutsche Mitte, are something completely new. The members of the party Deutsche Mitte do not have a laid down history, neither a great ancestry or great curricula vitae, which were created by elite cadre forges. Our members are not mentioned or written in any documents. We have emerged from anonymity. Simple people who are in the middle of life and have found themselves in a movement. After a long time, we may be the first attempt to represent the real interest of the German people without elitist privileges or elitist development paths. We are not shaped by any elite. The simple German man was never asked in the past whether he wanted to be burned on the front line for the benefit of any elitist's plans, and we, as a German simple man, now want to enter politics as self-confident women and men in order to discuss the deployment of people in the war broadly in the population, whether the Germans really want that. It doesn't matter how many people die or how much suffering it caused. Their daughters and sons are never on the front line by sophisticated methods. They are behind thick walls or in finance enclaves in the background and waiting. Right now, today, it is more important than ever to find points of contact. I mean docking points between our nations, between our two peoples, between the German and the Russians. But it does not really succeed. The known point of contacts are occupied by the elites via politicians and by the so-called leftists, by which I mean the entire leftist spectrum in Germany. And yes, even those who may be among us here today. I believe that the left not only cheat themselves, but also the Russians. How else can it be explained that Russians think that all free-thinking Germans who are not organized in established parties, in best case in left-wing parties, are Nazis? I experienced this close up in Moscow. Last year it was. Free-thinking people who openly seek opportunities to make contacts with Russians become branded without getting in contact, without looking who that is. They rob the Russians, you, ladies and gentlemen, for further points of contact with the German people. The left spectrum are cheating you of further interesting possibilities because this procedure keeps competition away. This is the competition that is urgently needed, dear Russians. That is a well-known strategy, especially of the link of the leftists in Germany, to silence disagreeable free-thinking Germans. But I would like to tell you frankly here today that this no longer works. Get to know me, my party. Talk to us and get your own picture. I would like to mention, despite all this, that here are heads inside the left who I like. Yes, I do. For example, Sarah Wagenknecht, Dieter Dehm, or the former leftist Oscar Lafontaine. Not all are bad. In my opinion, the way of censorship to the Russian also works via the so-called Antifa, the anti-fascists in Germany. I mean the anti-fascists. When I speak from the Antifa, I mean always the Antifa in Germany, which also grows out of the left. A group that appears in the form of people who are also willing to use violence to mercilessly crush left-wing politics that do not conform to their opinion. In the USA, there are probably efforts to sanction the Antifa there. After World War II, it was very probably justified to keep a watchful eye on Nazis. But time has changed, and the present behavior of the left, among other things in the form of Antifa, leads to the isolation of free thinkers and, in my opinion, even more to the creation of people who thereby radicalize themselves. You could almost think that this is intended because the financing would be secured from all sides, because who wants to have anything to do with radicals, especially right-wing radicals? Moreover, just as a very entity develops survival strategies when its time is up, which was now foreseeable with the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989. The left spectrum also developed a reason of existence, yes. For example, that they sell the Russian a picture of Germans, that they, the left spectrum, would represent the Germans people in Russia, but they don't. I hope, ladies and gentlemen, that you understand what I mean. There is so much more in Germany and to do with the Germans that then is sold to you. On the other hand, creating connection points between Russians and Germans has become much more difficult, because these points are occupied by the elite politicians in the name of the elites, who obviously have no other interests at the moment. The effects are now clearly visible in the isolation attempts to the West of harm Russia. I would like to explicitly point out that I have nothing against people in the left spectrum. They do what they do with enthusiasm, but they do not notice how they are misappropriated. I am talking about the administration of the left spectrum. To illustrate what I mean, I also do not have anything against, for example, the US Americans. They are usually nice, friendly people, but I do not agree with the values of the US American administration, so I differentiate. In the way it is said in Germany and in the other European countries, it can be seen that the established parties have distanced themselves far away from the people, from the truth. Even the left spectrum has no longer anything in common with the German people. This means that the established and the left-wing spectrum, who only represent the economic interests of the West, are rather meaningless, clearly do not represent the German people. The left spectrum, as modest as they do and as critical as they are of capitalist excesses, they view themselves as uncritically as they are and are well provided for. It gives me the impression that they have settled comfortably in the niche in which they find themselves. Well supplied, wealthy citizens who want to make left politics. After the fall of the Berlin Wall in Germany, which is almost 30 years ago, there was no real reason left for their existence. And we see that the left spectrum in the form of the party Die Linke did not manage to become a people's party. After this long period of time, politics for the people just looks different. I would now like to close the bow and come to the actual topic. Use Bismarck as a platform for peace. As Otto von Bismarck has already said, cooperation between Russia and Germany has always been good for Europe. Disagreements or even open enmity between the two states have already led to negativity in Europe. History proves him right. Or another example, George Friedman, head of the US-American think tank Stratfor, clearly summarized it in his speech in 2014 in Chicago. He said that if Germany and Russia becomes together, it will be the only constellation that could become dangerous for the United Nations. And that is why we have been isolating for over 100 years. Ladies and gentlemen, can we formulate more clearly what we are experiencing again today? At the moment, the Germans are subject of an apparent paralysis by their own established political forces, which in the meantime are uninhibited in pushing through the interests of the economic lobby. This will happen to Russia too, when it will not vote wisely. If the paralysis stops in Germany, it will of course be the strongest partner for the Russians. The Germans have little sophistication. They are idealists who, if they tackle something, bring it to an end and organize it well. This means that the Germans are not born exploiters. They are not ultra-capitalists. The Germans are moderate. They are moderate in everything they do. The Russian needs this moderation. The Russians need the possibility to steer a ship past cliffs, because they would like to jump over the cliffs, and if they do not warn in time, and if they are not warned in time, they will smash cliffs. Or they build their houses in that kind that after 30 years they stand crooked and Germans still stand straight after 100 years. Together we would complement each other perfectly. I don't want to list reasons here. Hundreds of rational reasons can be found, but there's another point that should be not ignored. Germans and Russians are more similar in their hearts and souls than anyone might immediately grasp. I suspect that this reassemblance is what makes others think hard. Why this I would like to leave in with the spiritual aspect, and would like to come to a point that Russians have an outraged myth of the Germans in their head. If the Russians knew that unbelievable nasty propaganda is going on all day long against Russia, in all the media, they would freeze. This propaganda has nothing else as its goal than it turn Russians into evil subjects, in order not to create a guilty conscience for the Germans when Russians are fatally ill. Russians still perceive us as what they have been taught through literature for hundreds of years. The Germans are the number one under the nations in technology, incredibly organized, incredibly civilized and friendly. And that outweighs the prejudgment of even our own leftists give us. This means that the Russians are more generous to us than our establishment with the involvement of the left. This is all a conglomerate. The left is part of the finely framed game, and we, freethinkers or people who gathered in alternative parties or other structures, are kept underage with the help of the left spectrum, the Antifa and questionable other structures in the background. We, who have been burned on the front line in history, are now raising our voices, are consciously and controlledly kept underage. The refined elites among all of us have opted for total disinterest in the German people. At least it makes this impression on me at the moment. The refined elites have well understood through the circumstances of their lives that the commitment for the German people is no longer worthwhile. This means that the Germans are on their own. And that's where the German party called Deutsche Mitte comes in. The goal of the left to keep us away from Russia, and they have the means to do so, because they are already sitting at the feet and money troughs, is the function of a guard. They are the gatekeepers to Russia. Yes, they actually only exist for bad speeches over Germany, and they bend over to the Russians because something clever in the form of good politics for the people does not really reach the German people, the German population. I would also like to take this opportunity to mention that nothing clever comes from the right wing too. Yes? All this became clear to me after my experience with the DKP, the German Communist Party in Moscow. At this point I would like to thank the DKP for this. It helped to open my eyes. I use the term guardian to describe the activity well in order to keep Germans away from Russians. He selects, chooses, and what gets through. I strongly recommend you, dear Russians, to invite more Germans who want to talk to you. But those who you are not know at the moment, invite unknown Germans. I can well imagine that this also applies to other peoples in Europe. Invite people from Netherlands, Italy, Spain, wherever you want. Not only Germans. Now I want to draw your attention to the circumstances that is also very important. Today's politicians are partly sons, daughters, perhaps grandchildren of some former politicians. These offspring have been politically educated and trained in one direction over many years. They are the executive power of any interest group. These offspring, who have read hundreds of books and gone through elite cadre forges, that consider themselves clever and educated do not really have more context with the actual population. They live in their own reality, which no longer has much to do with the people in my country. They exclude everything that does not correspond to their implanted views, even if it is not the direct descent. All prospective politicians go through appropriate political quadriforges of similar institutions. They are drilled. Another point of view is that already the same people, these well-trained, eel-smooth functionaries, sit in some talk shows. They are never unknown people from small political parties or free thinkers. New ideas have no chance. At this point, I would like to speak my self-confident words that I think that the German people are beginning to free themselves from paralysis, and I value my speech to you here today as a part of it. But not only in Germany, everywhere in the world people become active and start to ask the right questions. Even in a small steps but steadily. There is a spiritual change that will be very profound, and I am glad that I am a part of it. The game of the elites takes no longer place in the dark. It is visible for all, and who looks more closely recognizes it clearly. I am also pleased that I, an unknown man from the masses, have no financial interests, not having gone through any kind of political schools, have found the way to Europe, passed the guards in order to be allowed to tell you as an ambassador of the part of the German people that the time is ripe for more point of contact with your peoples. On behalf of this, I am organized in a community of like-minded people in Germany, the party Deutsche Mitte. And now I now come to the end with the hint that the future does not belong to the accumulation of unbelievable and therefore obscene wealth of individual people, but to the new positive future for people and everything that lies on our beautiful planet. Money will become its means to an end, not to build up power over the people who, as we can unfortunately see daily all over the world, led it to suffering and misery. The spirit of the times swings just in the direction, and precisely because we, the little people, do not have larger amounts of money. We come as like-minded people with heart and mind without financial interests, and will together create a world in peace and friendship, which this planet has not yet seen. A golden age. You don't believe that? In the hands of a few people lies the wealth of the poorer half of humanity. This is a result of the Oxfam study. I ask you how many billions of dollars do you need to sustain your life? Probably only a small fraction of it. The wealth of some is the poverty of others. That is what to understand is. Mm-hmm. What good could be done with all the money, trillions of euros, nevertheless, I do not want to take their money away from this pulpit. God will judge them. The current monetary system is fundamentally wrong, and it is even wrong in Russia. It must be reformed in order to serve humanity and not to enslave it. I urge you all to educate yourself with the error in our monetary system. which is the root of all the faults we are experiencing, caused by the creation of money out of thin air. I will conclude with the words of Edward Snowden, who said 2 weeks ago in Russia that life is better than ever, but hard, and that is the challenge of our generation. We have not asked for this challenge. However, things will get better and better. That's not happening because it would be natural. No, it's happening because of people like here. Thank you very much for your attention.